Yo, yo, this is it. I'm Mr. Fay, and you're listening to Attack of the Beats on IllMuzik.com. Here we are once again, another 5 beats and another 5 reviews. And I did slack off a bit last week with doing the show, but I was busy, sorry. Okay, I had stuff to do. And, don't forget, too, I make beats as well, right? So I got time to make my own beats and all that stuff. So, it's kind of hard to do that when I'm also doing all these shows and everything, so... Anyway, but here I am doing this one, and we'll get started right away. First up, we got Too Slick with Muddy. Let's check it out. All right. Okay, so that was Too Slick with Muddy. Now, this one's interesting because I like those keys, okay? They're nice keys, and I like what you did with them because it's, the whole beat, it's a nice flow. I mean, you have a nice production you've got set up here. And the problem, though, is that because you have those keys in stereo, I think it just kind of, I'm not going to say muddy up the mix, but, no pun intended with the title Muddy, but I'm not going to say it's muddying up the mix, but because you have that and the 808 kick, it's like they're fighting for each other, they're fighting each other for the, for that space, let's say. So I would say if you're going to keep the keys in stereo, then just, lower the volume a bit because it's a little too much in the mix, let's say. So, or you could just put the mono, but I know you probably won't want to put a mono because, you like it in stereo. It does sound nice in stereo. So in that case, you have options like the 808 kick, maybe just scale that back a bit, because, 808s are great. I always say that they're great and all that stuff, but sometimes, it's sometimes a little too much, because as you keep, using the 808 kick throughout the beat, it resonates, right? So it just fills up that low end, but sometimes it's a little too overwhelming and stuff. So maybe just scale that back a bit or whatever, because it's not distorted or anything, the 808, but it's just it's just kind of heavy in the mix. So I think the main thing is that the beat is nice. It's just that you just got to figure out in the mix where you want to really what you want to really have stand out more. So I would suggest the key should stand out more. And I would say bring back the 808 a little bit. So keep the keys as is if you want, but then just bring the 808 down a bit. And as far as the snare is nice because it's nice and chill, but I would bring it up a bit in the mix. So I make it a little louder because it's just kind of very faint there and stuff, So, but yeah, so mainly it's a nice beat. It's just the mix. So, but yeah, good beat. All right, so next up we got Alistar Rift with Humble and Arrogant. Let's check it out.
Rift.
All right. Okay, so that was Alistar Rift with Humble and Arrogant. Okay, so this one, at the beginning, it's a nice sample. I like that sample. And, at the beginning, I thought it was like, that's just the way it was, like that you were just going to bring it in like that, then have the full sample drop in. But instead, it's just, that's the way the sample sounds. So I don't know, like, if that is the way the sample just is, or if you made it like that. I'm assuming it's just the way the sample is, because that sample, it just sounds very lo-fi compared to the drums. Okay, so I've been there where I found a sample that was really nice, and yet I couldn't really use it because it sounded like shit. So the quality was shit. So in your case, it sounds like that. Like the sample it's a nice sample. It's just that the quality is not good. So that's okay, but it's hard to work with that really. There's not too much you can really do with that. You could try to make it in stereo and put some reverb and stuff, but still, like I've always said, in the articles I've written is, garbage in, garbage out. So, it all starts with that sample. So I would say if you're going to keep that sample, then you got to make sure those drums match it, because the drums, they just sound like, the drums are drums. They sound, on the digital side, they sound nice and clearer compared to the sample. So I would just, either dirty up the sample, dirty up the drums or something to match that sample. And even later on, when you have the female vocal coming in, that part, that sounds nice too. It's just that then the drums change. All of a sudden, you get the stereo snare. So I don't know what happened there. Which is kind of weird that it just transitioned to that. But it's just the main thing with this beat is that it's a good beat. It's just that sample, man. All the samples basically. Except for the drums, they all sound very muffled, compared to the drums. So it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to work with that because, like I just said, it's just, what do you do? You got this lo-fi sample. So, if you're going to use it, then you got to make sure those drums are lo-fi. So that's the only option really. So and it's a shame because, sometimes it's like that. You find a sample, it's dope and everything. You want to use it. And you really want to use it, but then you're like, shit, man, it sounds like shit. So, what do you do? So, I don't know. Work on the drums, let's say, make that shit lo-fi and then try to, do something with the mix, like add something to your master channel, some kind of mastering plugin or something, like Ozone, for example. I like to use Ozone. And, that will make it sound a lot better overall, let's say. So try something like that. All right, so next up we've got IllMuzik Pro with Slumber Party. Let's check it out. All right. Okay, so that was IllMuzik Pro with Slumber Party. Now this one, he got me thinking, like, way back, because I still use synths. I like to sample a lot, but I still use synths. And but back in the day, I used a lot of synths, a lot more back then. And but even today, like when I use them, sometimes you get these synths, the sounds are cheesy, and like there's not much you can really do with that. So in your case, you had that key, just ding, 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 going all the way through, and it sounds really cheesy, like on its own. That's what I'm saying. Like on its own, it sounds cheesy. So it's one of those things where it sounds bad on its own, but when you blend it with other stuff, it sounds fine because just sitting there in the mix, So the main thing with your beat is that it's a nice build up. Okay, you go from that cheesy synth key, then you start building it up, add other things with the bass and all that stuff. The bass was actually sitting real nice. That was nice, but it's nice how you built it up. So it was good. The main thing I would say though is that just don't leave those keys there. Don't leave them on their own because they don't sound good on their own and stuff. And sometimes you want to leave it on their own and all that, but sometimes you just can't do it because they just don't sound good and stuff. So you gotta do something with that, because otherwise you're gonna have this cheesy keys synth coming in, and it just kind of it's gonna turn people off, I guess. I mean, I'm assuming for me it does turn me off, So that's why whenever I've used something like that, I always make sure it's not singled out by itself. It's not solo, nothing. So it's got to sit in the mix. But even then, the way you did it, like I said, it's a nice build up your whole beat. But those keys, even though they sit well in the mix, I would still lower the volume down because it's a little too loud in the whole mix. Because even though it sits well, it's just that it gets a little repetitive, a little kind of annoying. So I would just scale that back a bit. And the other thing is that I was hoping for some drums, man. Come on. I was hoping for some drums. As I'm sitting there, I'm nodding my head to this. I'm like, okay. We're a minute in now. Okay. No drums yet. What's going on here? What's going on? So, I don't know. I would have liked to hear some drums on this shit. See what you can come up with that and all that. So, but overall, though, I like the build up. Nice shit. All right. So next up, we got Dr. Beat with Gutter Grown. Let's check it out. All right. Okay, so that was Dr. Beat with Gutter Grown. And okay, so this beat, what was I saying? Ground. That's not even a word. Anyway. All right, so this beat, what I really like about your beat here is the fact that you do a good job of building it up. It's a nice production. Because that's the problem with a lot of beats that I hear, like sometimes I'll hear a beat, it's really, really good, but it's just that the person doing the beat, it's like they don't know how to piece together a production. It's very hard to do that. Not everybody can do that. So you did a good job of that. I like that. Now you have the high synth part. Okay, that part, honestly, I would do away with that. Okay, now I'm not saying get rid of the whole part. It's just that get rid of that sound. You can keep that pattern, so just change it out. And I was thinking some strings, put some strings in there, because that high synth lead, it's just, I don't know, it just didn't sound good. It's just not a good sound. I just found it's kind of out of tune, let's say, with the rest of the beat. So, but automatically I was thinking, no, you know what, strings would be really good with this, because you have a nice build up, it's a nice track and everything. And the other thing was the drums. Okay, so the snare was okay, but it was the kick that bothered me, because especially at the beginning, I could hear the kick. It was it sounded very compressed, very it sounded like one of those kicks you hear like from like a preset on a keyboard or something, like for like a like a club track or something like that, like dance club or something. So that's what it sounded like. But then when you dropped in the heavy kick, it sounds good, but I could still hear that in the background. I could still hear it, very faint. So I don't know if you compressed it, like over compressed it or whatever, or if that's just the way the kick is, but it just sounds like it's very flattened out. So I would change out that kick, and while you're at it, then you might as well change the snare too to match it. But I would change out that kick, because to me it doesn't sound like the type of kick that would go with this type of beat. So that's the main thing that bothered me, that and that high synth part. If you could change those two things, and like I said, the high synth part, the lead, it's hard sometimes to get a good synth lead. Sometimes a lot of them, they don't really sound that great, or they do sound good, but they're not necessarily for hip hop, right? So that's why, like in this situation, go with some strings, see how that shit sounds. I'm sure it'll sound really, really good with that. All right, so next up we've got the last beat. It's Dirty Beats with Get Back Home. Let's check it out. All right. Okay, so that was Dirty Beats with Get Back Home. All right, so this one, I really like this production. It was well put together. Okay, the drums are banging. I like that shit. It's not like super punchy or anything like that, and it's not like overwhelming or whatever. It's just a nice drum loop you have going on. Now, as far as the samples are good. I like the strings you have, the sample strings in the background, and the vocals, a bit of piano and all that. So it all matches really well. The vocals, though, I think they're, like just the way she sounds, it's like it sounds a little off, like not necessarily totally in key with the rest of the music. But I know it's hard to get that sometimes when you sample some vocals. It's hard to really get the right key. But you try your best. So in situations like that, what I do is, if the vocals don't match the music like that well, then I'll try to mask it a bit. So first of all, I'll lower the volume of the vocals. put a bit of delay or reverb on it or something to extend it out. But mainly just kind of hide it, amongst the other stuff, like sit well in the mix rather than just have it like really out there, because that's what you have. You have the vocals kind of out there above the rest in a way, so it's like you really hear it, So, but the main thing too is that the vocals, but also the strings, piano, like the sample chops in a couple parts, they were like they ended abruptly. So a lot of times, people send in beats, and that's what happens. They have these samples where they just chop it off all of a sudden. And there was one part, it was near the beginning of the beat, where I don't know if it was the strings, like that string part, or if it was the vocals, but one of the two, and it just ended abruptly. So it kind of just sounds like the next part just jumps in right away. You know what I mean? So, so for that, it's just a matter of obviously just chopping the right part and trying to fade it out, delay it out, something like that. So that kind of takes away from it, But overall, it's a nice beat. I like it. I like the way you put everything together, and it's a nice mix. I like that. But like I said, the main thing would be the vocals, to really, let it sit in the mix a little better, and just work on those chops just a little more, so they don't just end so abruptly. So, but yeah, good beat. All right, so that's it for me. I'm Mr. Fade. This is Attacking the Beats. Keep sending your beats in. I keep reviewing them. And my favorite beat this week. The winner is, drum roll please, Dirty Beats with Get Back Home. Let's check it out.